I'm Tony Nguyen. I'm a cultural worker, and I founded Spacy in 3 years ago.
What inspired you to start Spacy?
For me, I think I've been in Dallas for a lot of my life, a little bit more than half of it. And it's been really fascinating, kind of seeing the levels of infrastructure, and both kind of like the granular, of course, like economically, but also just like culturally. I think there's always been really great infrastructure for like maybe like music or like visual arts, especially. But when it comes to like the moving image, I felt like there was kind of like a lack of spaces of gathering in which people can kind of find, a intimate experience with the moving image, and kind of really prioritizing like micro budget films, international, and just really like a lot of films that really wouldn't just get like a spotlight otherwise. So for me, I've been to a few like microcinemas or screening rooms, and I was kind of familiar with how they operated. And I just kind of wanted to see if I could like put that same framework here, and kind of course, have like me and the volunteers that we have to kind of put their own spin on the events that we throw.
I understand you were born in Des Moines, Iowa.
Yeah.
Is that where you spent roughly the first half of your life?
Yeah, I was in Des Moines, Iowa, and I think that was actually a really incredible time for me in that, like, I think especially as a kid, I wasn't, I really wasn't put on to the arts. My parents weren't like those type of people. And so for me, my general exposure to the arts in Des Moines was just pretty like contained. Like I played a lot of like video games, etc. But I think really what was really impactful in Des Moines was just kind of seeing how much space was kind of just available for me to kind of really just like play with like any ideas that I have, what any kid should kind of have.
Can you talk about your own history with microcinemas?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's kind of like, any place can kind of be a screening experience of some sort. You kind of don't even really need walls. It's just really just kind of like an area where people can kind of like sit, and then a way for you to kind of project. And I think for me, kind of realizing, especially post 2020, post lockdown, a lot of these like independent movie theaters were just like dying down. They just could not keep up with, of course, like the costs is closing down with COVID, et cetera, et cetera. But I think especially post-lockdown, I think people have just been really hungry for a lot of like alternative media and alternative experiences. And the rise, especially with like Gen Z, interest in like repertory cinema, I think there's really like a huge hunger for that. And I think with the different places that I kind of explored, like Spectacle in New York, I have found that I think it's just really more important than ever, especially in the context of like Dallas, where it's kind of like a funny cliche that I always kind of bring up, that like everything in Texas is everything is bigger in Texas. So I think it really was kind of really getting down to like the fundamentals, and just really just like, okay, like what can we do to like set ourselves in different shape from each other. From other places. I think the intimacy was a really critical thing, because I think that's becoming such a desired aspect.
When everyone goes bigger, goes smaller.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where like our ambitions are still high. I think the type of events and projects that you want to do, of course, have like high ambition. but ultimately, we're an extremely scrappy space. It's all volunteer run. So we're kind of working with, just the resources that we have. But I think we are kind of appreciative of, working with the framework that we have, but then also kind of testing and really pushing, what we can kind of do with this framework. Because I think with a lot of like micro cinemas, especially, or just a lot of cinemas in general, a lot of their money generally comes from not really from the theatrical movie going experience. It's usually through like private donations and other things. So I think for us, we're really trying to find the ways in which we can kind of really have a lot of different types of like subcultures really make the space their own.
What have been some of your greatest challenges running Spacy?
Time, for sure. I mean, for a while, maybe like a year and a half, 2 years, it was mainly just me. And I was at one point doing almost screenings every day, and it was just kind of not sustainable.
Wow.
Yeah, don't do that. And then I'm also like I'm definitely a person that also had to learn how to kind of like delegate and, create that system to do so. And we're slowly but surely trying to do that, to really have people be taught and be given the tools and blueprints to hopefully, understand the ins and outs. But then, honestly, hopefully that people understand that this model, considering how, scrappy that it is, that people can feel inspired to hopefully have these type of dialogues in their local neighborhoods. We operate in the really wonderful neighborhood of Oak Cliff, where I think it has such a really cherished arts community, through both like commercial means, but then just through underground means. However, I mean, we have a lot of people drive from like the suburbs. And it's really, and sometimes even like other cities outside of Texas, and it's really, of course, flattering to hear that people are willing to make the distance to really experience the events that we put on. But we're always kind of also concerned that people shouldn't have to also go so far to have these type of like alternative experiences. So we hope we can kind of really have these blueprints out for someone to host like a screening at like, I don't know, like a bar in like Frisco, in a coffee shop in like Mansfield, et cetera, et cetera.
What was it like building up an audience for this space?
Yeah, I mean, I think a really important fact with the space is that, I think with the larger economy, with a lot of businesses kind of labeling themselves as like community spaces, I think we're trying to wrestle and really define what really makes a community hub. So I personally don't define it as right now as like a community space, but just really as a place of gathering and congregation. But I think ultimately, though, like the feedback that we get from folks is really significant, whether it be actual like numbers of people coming, and or just really the outreach that we get from people locally. But we just even get like, of course, like outreach from a lot of people throughout the United States, globally, just really having interest in just like spaces willing to like show their films, just because there's a lot of places otherwise it's just really, really tricky for extremely independent moving image makers to put something out there that maybe they have to pay out of pocket for, or they have to put a lot of PR behind, or hire someone in PR to do so. And I think for us, it's more about like, the angle, or like what's really kind of like the nuances, or what's the voice that these films can kind of bring. I think that's really more important to us. I think with building an audience, It has been tricky. I'm not gonna lie. I think there's like a lot of factors in which it made sense. I think the suburbanization of the Dallas Fort Worth Metroplex is a really hard thing to kind of combat. But I think overall, I think we're trying to definitely, have something for everyone, which is a really important thing. And, trying to really fill in a lot of gaps because I think people are really, and I mean, fill in a lot of gaps, play something that potentially is familiar to folks, but then also really hopefully push the boundaries and really get them to really critically think in a change of perspective that they wouldn't have maybe otherwise experienced.
What are some of the major lessons that you've learned along the way?
I think for us, like I mentioned before, we wanted to kind of have the feel to be like a very neighborhood theater vibe. So we were trying to do something like every day at one point, and it was just again like not sustainable. So I think for us, we kind of just book accordingly to when it just kind of makes sense with capacity, kind of similar to how I guess a music venue runs, if anything. Community partnerships and really just collaborating with folks is really crucial. Not only is it just it's more work, but it's more fun to really tap in with people knowing that they support the larger mission, are just really just trying to have an event and have people really together and just experience, like it could be like a film. We throw other events that aren't screenings, but like I think overall the bread and butter is like screenings, and just really have people discuss the films or discuss amongst each other pre and after the film is just a really important thing.
How has the way you've run the space evolved and changed since its inception?
Yeah, I think with it being scrappy, I think people have always understood that there are like limitations to the space, but like I think sometimes those limitations can be like benefits. Like sometimes when we play stuff that maybe kind of benefits to like the really smaller environment, more intimate environment, to where people just actually feel almost organically, have that organic interest to actually maybe like talk, laugh with each other during the film. We don't kind of discourage that unless people are just quite frankly being rude. But I think sometimes like talking with others during the film, each other is like really, really sweet. And so I think we do kind of welcome those type of different experiences, and being that intimate can really, just lend to that. In terms of like evolving overall, I think that really the big thing has just been kind of evolving what the type of volunteers that we can kind of have. Before, it really was just maybe like 3 people, but we definitely have grown for people to kind of take on different roles. And, I think we're always trying to expand on that and just really also get more people comfortable to really host an event. Like, as much as I have fun programming and really kind of playing, I guess, like the game in terms of learning and really like strategizing, the best ways in which we can kind of engage local audiences to come out. It's also just really important for pushing people to feel comfortable to kind of do something, because I think a lot of people can be really intimidated sometimes if, let's say, 2 people come out. But people, I tell people all the time, it's very surprising what people will come out to, because again, people are really eager for something that maybe they just wouldn't have experienced anywhere otherwise.
Have you or a volunteer ever had to throw anyone out?
Out
of this one just now.
Yeah. No, I'm not opposed to it. We're again a pretty like lax place. So we haven't really had an instance where someone has been incredibly rude. Thankfully, the people who come to Spacy have just been really incredible people overall, and just really are patient with not only how we kind of operate, but also patient with other people. I don't think I've could have asked for like a better audience, honestly.
What have been your most popular events so far?
Yeah, I think definitely a lot of events that we've partnered with folks have been really amazing. We had one recently where we had a screening of this film called All That's Left of You, and we had we were co-organizing with a Palestinian pal, and she wanted to throw the screening, but then also kind of sell art, food, posters, pre and after the event, and have these donations go towards an organization that supported Palestinian female journalists. So I think that was really incredible for us. We've also just had other screenings, such as every so often, maybe like once a year or so, we will get talent to come to the place. One year, I think the first year that we operated, we had the filmmaker, or I guess a lot of people will know him also as like a video artist, is Ryan Chikardin. We had him do like a 10th anniversary screenings of 2013 films, and it was really fun to just kind of have those films back to back, and then just show him around the city. Those are some, I guess, on top of my head.
Are there any films that you can think of that you've wanted to screen but you just haven't had the chance to?
That's always that, in the world of like licensing, especially, it can be really hard. There's a lot of films I wish I could play, but the battle of finding the right person, or even sometimes when you find the right person, of just like a lot of other factors of whether we can actually secure that licensing is always tricky. However, in terms of like when we get around to, I always kind of want to play a lot more French art house films. Those are always just really fun. I think we always are trying to, especially given the neighborhood that that we work in, we always are trying to look a lot more for like Latin American films, especially. It's been tricky to find stuff in like a Spanish dub, but if we have the option, we try to prioritize that as well. But I think outside of that, I mean, I'm definitely much more interested nowadays of just kind of having people throw events that are like adjacent to also like a screening that we have. Like we'll have like something which maybe someone will have like a market after, or like a pop-up of like selling like food or like clothing, etc. And it kind of ties really well with the film. I think those have been really fun to do as well.
You were the first person to open up a microcinema in DFW. Have you heard rumblings from anyone trying to do the same in the area?
I hope so. I haven't heard personally, but I hope so. I hope someone also kind of like, takes upon it. For me, a screening room, again, like I mentioned before, can be done in so many different formats. I always just find it really inspiring to where, like, I think a lot of people's maybe imagination to kind of have something is just sometimes can be really I think sometimes they limit themselves of like how certain things should go or run. And like I will be quite frank, in which like I'm not opposed to just like throwing an event on just some like random parking lot that's probably illegal to probably do because of course it's like a private parking lot, but it's just like the sky is truly the limit of where you can kind of host something, and just really asking people, whether it be your friends or filmmakers, to do so is easier said than, I mean, it's really, really easy. Like, a lot of people would just be really be willing to like just talk. We do a lot of we've done a lot of like virtual Q&As with directors and talent, and all you have to do is kind of ask. And I think that's just really, hopefully, with that same type of attitude, I hope someone does kind of have an interest to kind of start, another space kind of similar to us, and just have, their own unique take on it. Whether it's like they're focusing more on genre, or they're also focusing a lot more on like art house or like experimental or like local. I mean, I never see what we do or like the other theaters in the Metroplex as competition. I think it's all like really complementary to each other, because I think overall, I think it's important for people to kind of have films that aren't at like a multiplex.
Do you have any words of advice for somebody who's looking to open up their own microcinema?
Well, for me, I didn't do anything prior to this in terms, I guess, like, how a lot of like, chefs before like opening a restaurant, they'll do a lot of pop-ups before. That's probably the smartest thing to do. I didn't do any of that beforehand. It was a very like hard launch. We're going to figure it out as we go. I think it was one of those things where, like, for me at least, if I didn't start like now, I was never gonna start it. I think really the biggest thing, like I mentioned before, is just really just having the attitude that just like, just get to it. I think really the hardest part is honestly just figuring out the licensing. I'm always open to having discussions on what that can looks like and feels like. But overall, I mean, just even starting like a private club is really just an important like key step. Just having the established like cadence of having even just like friends and like maybe your strangers from like those friends of friends coming to something that you host at your house or your backyard is a really crucial first step, because I feel like when you start hosting, I think at that level, then you can maybe feel comfortable, of course, hosting in a more public setting. And don't be afraid to also just really ask for help from, said friends, community partners. I think with the city, I think it's really incredible to kind of work with, because people are so willing to be supportive and collaborative and just give ideas if they don't have the time or the capital to do so. I think overall people are super appreciative that anyone has something that is for the larger culture, if anything. So I think that's really the biggest thing. And then outside of that, just have a lot of time and patience.
How did you decide on the logo for Spacy?
I asked my friend Angel Roa, who I've known since middle school, to do it, and she did a really great job with it. I think I was just thinking a lot of everything that can be kind of encompassed in like a Venn diagram. Beyond that, I just think aesthetically it looked fun. But yeah, no, I think overall, I think that's really it.
My last question is, what direction are you planning on taking Spacy? What projects are you most excited about tackling with this space?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping to do more events just for the community that aren't screening related. As much as we love hosting like screenings, it's been really important to kind of have the balance of both, because we understand that also, like, not everyone can, especially with how everything is kind of going, like cost-wise with the economy, that it's really hard to kind of spend, $10 for like a screening. And so for us, we try to also have like a lot of different events in which maybe they are free for people to kind of really just hang out and just really meet new people. That's really a really critical element. So I think we're just trying to brainstorm what that kind of maybe looks like, whether it be like a music video night, hopefully having more ways for the volunteers to also like meet each other and hang out with each other. We threw like a volunteer party, I think in February or March, and that was both for like existing volunteers to kind of like meet each other, and then of course recruiting new ones. So I think we hopefully will do more of that, because right now things are a little siloed with the volunteers kind of just kind of only really speaking to just me. I think hopefully we'll also just do a lot more, partnerships with a lot of like local organizations and folks. I think that's just really the most important thing. I think we'll have more time to really build out more, more events with those folks, because they just take so much more time. But it really is rewarding to kind of get their input, and seeing how that really, the impact is definitely there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, thank you.